Episode 129 of the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Welcome back. And if this is your first time, welcome here. My name is Jeremy. I'm just getting our conversation rolling, introducing things here. And then you're going to hear from Sid Coop from our team. And he's interviewing Nathan Archer today, a youth worker in Abbotsford, British Columbia, talking about measuring your ministry. Now, this might seem like a conversation. If you're a volunteer, you're like, I think this is more for like the youth director or the youth pastor measuring things in ministry. But I really want you to tune in and to follow through with this whole episode, because oftentimes what happens is, even as volunteers, we can look at some of the typical measurements of ministry, things like attendance, and judge our ministry based off of simply that one number. And as Nathan's going to unpack, is that there are lots of other things that we can look at to figure out if we're seeing good things, fruitful things happening in our ministry. So make sure you tune in for that conversation. Before we get there, just want to give a nice shout out to our wonderful partner that makes this podcast happen. We've got Trinity Western University, and Trinity Western's a school on the west coast of our country of Canada that has a phenomenal amount of programs available for students. And the great thing is that no matter if you've got somebody that's doing a business degree or that is doing an English degree, that they can go to a place that's also going to care deeply for their faith. And that is the story of Trinity Western University. So we are just so excited about the work that they do with their students, and highly recommend, if you've got students in grade 11 or 12 that are kind of thinking about the different options out there, this is a great school that you should take a look at, and be sure to build a bridge to your students that are processing those types of questions. All right, well, let's jump into today's conversation that Sid got to have with Nathan Archer.
Welcome to the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Youth ministries rise and fall on the volunteers, so we are here to encourage and equip you. Join the conversation as we tackle the practical questions you are asking, so you can help the next generation know Jesus.
Today, unfortunately, we do not have Jer with us managing this experience, so this could go right off the rails in mere seconds, but that's going to be entertaining, and so all of you who are listening to this right now are going to love that. But I am so excited to have with me today my friend Nathan Archer, who Nate works at Central Heights Church in Abbotsford. Nathan, let me quit introducing you for a second, and you introduce yourself. Please, Nate, tell us where you are, tell us what you're doing, how long you've been there. Go ahead, talk to me.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Lisette coming onto this thing and just like screaming every time. So I feel like that's the obligatory like intro. It's like, yeah, so good to be here. But I digress. Yeah, I'm from Abbotsford. I mean, I grew up in Alberta, went to Briarcrest in Saskatchewan, came out to BC, started here at Central Heights Church, just like, I don't know, 6-7 months before the pandemic hit. So we were just kind of like settling in, starting to make some key decisions. And then, as everyone has experienced over the last year and a half, major transition mode. So everything was flipped on its head, and we are moving on from there.
Yeah, dude. And Nate, I got to tell you right now, like, man, I have over the last kind of 18 months, we didn't really know each other super well. Now, I'd met you at Youthquake, I think, Nate. Did you not? You were like my concierge when I was speaking at Youthquake that 1 year, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
I came and popped by. I think there was a time where I was like talking with the church and I was asking for wisdom from you. And I'm pretty sure at that point, I was just like, you were just in the mode of like, oh, here's another random college student who's just like looking for advice. Like, no clue. But yeah, definitely last 18 months, it's been much more connection.
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed that. And by the way, it was just me probably dialing in, trying to figure out what I was going to say in the next few moments. So, but this is great. So Nathan, we've really appreciated the work you do at Central Heights, and Jared and I have talked about that. And, we continue to see how you've been thinking really creatively through the pandemic, and not just creatively, but fought to stay in it, clarity on the mission and vision, and then thinking through different ways, to strategize. And I've loved that so much. But over the last little while, Nate, we got in a conversation the other day, which was so cool to me. And we started talking about things we measure in our youth ministries, right? Like, how do we know if we're really hitting it? So like, if I'm a volunteer youth worker, you know what I mean? Probably the number one thing as a volunteer youth worker, or even as a point leader, that I'm measuring is like attendance. How many kids do I have showing up? And what's funny, Nate, about that, of course, is you and I both know that, like, while we know we should measure that, and we do measure that, and even subconsciously we're always measuring it, sometimes we kind of push against it as well, right? Like, we're like, there's got to be more than just number of kids showing up. Like, we could do a lot of things that don't help our mission to get kids showing up, right? I know you want to jump in. Say something there. Go.
Well, I think it's interesting because that's kind of the classic early 2000s model. And I think there's been a transition season in youth ministry as a whole where it's no longer just like youth workers, whether point leaders or volunteers, who are kind of deconstructing that. But I feel like now there's this generation of which I would be a part that have come through their own youth ministry experience as a student, where their youth pastors themselves are kind of deconstructing that like attendance centric metric model. So like my youth group experience was not about like, let's throw as big of a party as possible, get the pizza, get as many students as possible. It was like, we would sit with like the Desert Fathers, and like the games portion at the beginning was kind of like, if you wanted to show up for that, you could. And we would, it was just a completely, most people talk about like, could I remember like 5 sermons from my entire youth group experience? I don't know if my youth pastor even preached 5 times. Like, we were all about dialogue. So it's radically different experience. And I think that's more and more the case now. Is in general, we have this new generation of youth leaders that are coming up that even their own experience wasn't just based on attendance. But I think the issue is, there's something, it might not be sexy, but incredibly simple. And then it just like, it stays when you just have like a really nice metric like attendance. So you're like, I can track whether or not this is something that's good. You can make adjustments along the way. And I think that's why it's so difficult to shake the attendance-based model, because it's so simple.
Now, of course, and Nate, this is where you and I would have a great conversation, and we would say, yeah, it's an easy metric. Quantitative metrics are easy to come by. How many kids showed up? Now, one of the things, of course, that you and I both know is we do measure those because we want to know when kids aren't showing up, and we want to find out why they're not showing up. And we, especially for my volunteer youth workers, I'm going to speak right to a point leader right now. I actually want to track my roster still and have my leaders do it so that I can say, hey guys, Jeff hasn't been here for 3 weeks. Could you make sure you connect with him? And let's find out why he's not showing up, because it might be as a crisis at home that we're not aware of, that we want to lean into. It might be that he's having relational issues in our youth ministry, and these are all about pastoral issues that we actually want to address and be present with. So we're not full, I want to say, Nate, and I know that you would agree with this. It's not that we don't want to count, but it's number one, it's why are we counting? I think we're challenging that a lot. And number two, how do we know if we're winning when those numbers actually indicate something healthy? So I'll tell you one thing, just as we're talking about shifting metrics. So for me, when we used to speak, and how do you measure this? This is a qualitative metric. But I would always think, man, I'm winning if my kids are listening to me. That's for the win, or if they laughed at my last story. Come on. Yes. So then we started going, wait a second, is this really creating life change and transformation? Probably not so much. But if I had a kid that could actually have deep conversation with their leader about significant spiritual things, and that leader could listen to that young person, we knew that was life transforming. We knew that was deeply significant. So all of a sudden, our metric became, hey, if I had a leader come to me and say, hey, Sid, the way you set up that conversation, or the way that you kind of dialed in that talk, really allowed me to have a deep conversation with my kid. Thank you so much. And I'm like, oh, there's the win. That's what you're talking about. Now we're having a deep dialogue, deep conversation. So we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we measure different things that are actually measuring what's most important in passing faith on to the next generation? So Nathan, you started doing some different measurements, what I think are so cool. So you got to tell us about that. And remember, I want to just say, hey, point leaders, you're listening to this. If you're a point leader on this thing, you get to affect, the system structures, what you measure, big picture. You get to pass it on to your volunteers. Volunteer. This is primarily for you. I want you to think differently, perhaps, about what is, how do I know if I'm winning in my youth ministry, or what are the things I should do that I could kind of track that would help me know if I'm really making a difference? That's what this conversation should be helpful for. So Nate, go ahead. Fill us in on some of that stuff.
Yeah, I think for us, it started, as so many things did, at the beginning of the pandemic, when, we were stripped away from kind of some of the most core things that we were doing in youth ministry. So we were trying to think, how do we recalibrate our wins. And I remember like one of the many, it was one of the massive like national wide network Zoom calls that happened like at the beginning that youth worker community hosted. And I remember as everybody was just brainstorming, here's something that we're doing. I remember just saying in that conversation, just like the initial idea in our head and saying, we are trying to put less energy into our like primary midweek gathering because we're just not seeing the same wins as we used to see into it. And so we're trying to ask leaders to actually not burn themselves out trying to make these epic moments. And instead to say, what if you were to expend your energy more broadly throughout the entire week? And so that's kind of like snowballed to now where this year, what we're trying to put in very clearly is continuing that trend. And we would love to see, just it's the size of our youth group, the number itself doesn't matter, but for sake of clarity, we want to see across our youth teams, these are volunteers, collectively, that per month we would have 50 significant connections with students per week. And that number can mean whatever.
Okay.
For us, we're not looking... Yeah, go ahead.
Pause. I got to stop you right there. That is like the coolest thing I ever heard. Now, I think if someone hears that number, it's going to be hard for them to figure out what that means. So I just want to clarify this.
Yes.
Nate, first of all, tell me how many volunteers you're working with in your youth ministry.
Yes. So we are at about, right now, official number is 35. I'm hoping to get that to 40 in the next couple of weeks here. We'll see.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, Lord, we want Nate to have 40 volunteers because we know more volunteers that are discipling kids means more kids' lives are getting changed. Okay, that's great. Love it.
So we're really not looking to burn anybody out. Like people, I honestly believe, I was having a conversation with someone yesterday, in the context of church volunteers, I think that youth leaders put in more work than anybody else. And I think that's beautiful, but we're not looking to just like devote your life as if the only thing that God's doing in the world is like Central Heights Youth Ministry. We're not looking for that, but we are looking for intentional relationships, intentional discipleship. So we're asking like on top of the like primary midweek gathering, once every 3 weeks, we're aiming for that each leader would have once every 3 weeks a significant connection. And we define significant connections pretty broadly. We're not like our team, I think we're at the point now where we're not just thinking of hosting another like follow-up event for your entire group. We think in terms of grabbing slushies. In COVID, as we started to think through this and we were celebrating moments that this happened, our team started to think creatively where what they would do is our leaders would just like plot out. They would actually do this instead of their midweek gathering sometimes because their students hated Zoom so much. They would plot out around the city where all their students lived and they would just pop by for 10 minutes and just pray with them. And they said that those conversations were like way better than any of the conversations that they'd been having otherwise. And they would just kind of run around the city. We now have every single one of our groups has a group chat, including our grade sixes. They use something called Messenger Kids. Check out Messenger Kids if you haven't used Messenger Kids. It's through the parents' Facebook. So it's dream situation. But we've had some amazing conversations come out of Messenger Kids, out of group chats. So we're just looking to think like, I just think like we spent a lot of time in 1 Corinthians as a youth team. And I just think of like Paul's example of disciple making and what that looks like as imitate me as I imitate Christ. I mean, I know like there's a whole bunch of different discipleship models. I think like Robert Coleman, I think it was in the late 90s had this like big one with 8 steps, everywhere from like selection to consecration, like a whole bunch of different pieces. And then you just like see Paul. It's just like so simple. Follow me as I follow Christ. So what we're really trying to do is to just like increase the proximity of moments that you could actually see. Here's what your youth leader's doing to follow Jesus. Here's them investing in you, and just trying to maximize those moments.
Okay, I got busted because I'm just so stoked about this. So I'm gonna back up here for just a second. So I want to what Nate is saying for volunteers who are listening. They as a team they came up with an accessible kind of target as far as number of minutes or, moments of connecting outside of program moments. So volunteers, I want to say this, we acknowledge you have a limited amount of time to be able to, and different people, different stages of life, limited amount of time. However, here's what we're saying. Nate, this is what we've said all along. When we connect with a kid outside a program moment, it helps a kid understand that they're more than just a program to us. It probably 10X's the experience. That's what we say. Yeah. Now, Nate, here's what we're wrestling with is we're saying, if we can take spiritual formation also outside the program moment, and that's what you're going to get to right away, So we still love the program moment. We need to gather. We get it. But if we can move spiritual formation outside the program moment as well through the week, then spiritual formation is more than just a program to that young person, which, of course, for all of us, when a kid ages out of the program, our great fear is that they age out of spiritual formation, right? Because it's just been about the program. So we're really trying to decentralize here. That's what we're shooting for. So volunteers, you hear that. And I'll just say this, Nate, right now, we're working... We run a couple of youth ministries, which we really love. We're so thankful to be on the ground in youth ministries. We think that's super important. And in our one youth ministry we're running right now, we've just started, each month we do like a spiritual discipline challenge. So we've started with a prayer challenge. And what we've said to our volunteers is we'd like to see a certain number of your kids commit to doing a prayer challenge where they'll go. So right now it's really simple. We just took the ACTS acronym for the first prayer challenge, and that kids would journal through the ACTS acronym: adoration, confession, thanksgiving, supplication, and they would commit to doing it twice a week. And our leader would check in on them, like you said, in their group chat or maybe over a Coke or slushie or whatever it is, and just ask the question, hey, how'd it go this week? Or they would also share. And not just share the success, share, I tried this week and I couldn't do it. So I missed it, but I'm trying again, so that it's not just about the successful, it's about the journey. So this is, we're thinking this way. I love it. And we're finding different ways to do it. Now, I want you to just reflect what I love about what you're saying, Nate, and I hadn't thought about this yet, is you've been able to say, here's a collective number we as a group want to get to. So I'm assuming you talk about that as a team. And then you're saying individually, here's how we could contribute, but we carry each other. So as a team, we've just got this collective thing we're shooting for. And I think it's like so cool. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of clarify that. Now keep going, bro. Keep going.
Yeah, so on the spiritual discipline front, man, I think if there was one thing, like the best thing that came out of the pandemic for us, it would be the way that we started to rethink prayer. Because I think for a lot of like prayer, even just like Central Heights Church in particular, has been trying to really like ramp up the centrality of prayer in our church as a whole. So trying to think about that on a youth level is sometimes, I think it's been hit or miss. Like, do you have pre-gathering prayer? As a church, we'll have like weekly prayer times at like 6 a.m. And I'm just like, I just can't imagine like a student coming to this thing at the church. But I cannot take credit for this. I was listening to a podcast. I think it was actually an Alpha podcast that John Tyson was on. And he said he did this when he was a youth pastor. So like zero credit from me. But he said that he found that students are more likely than anybody to like do something that they find worth dying for. And so what he said is he would take a bunch of students, like grab some boys, wake them up at like 5:30, 6 in the morning, go to their school, walk around it and pray that God would move. It's like, that sounds fun. We tried it once, like just grabbed kind of two of our strongest student leaders and their leader as well. And we just like walked around the school and prayed. And I don't think like what it's ballooned into, and I can get to that in a moment. I like no idea what it would balloon into. But I just remember like being there and like, as we're walking around the school, my eyes are just like widening as I'm realizing everything that's happening. All of a sudden, you're not convincing these students that, you have to like do 20 minutes of like cultural relevancy to try and get like a 5-minute message on Jesus or something. It's just like they are there for 60 minutes, ready to pray, wanting to learn how to pray and like contending prayer. And they'll like,
and it's missional. Like it's missional. They're like on their space.
It's incredible. Yeah. So you get them to like list off the names of their friends, their classmates, their teachers, and like you don't know these people. Some of them you might, but you're just like you're praying over them. And like my favorite moment is at the end. We'll just like pray specifically over each student, just like minutes before they're walking into their school. Just that God, like Nick, would God make you like a person of peace in an incredibly anxious school, that you would just have this ability to like radiate the love and presence of Jesus wherever you go? And it's just like minutes later, they're entering their school. It's like, that was the starting point. And so it just turned into like, man, this is like, how can we not do more of this? And at first I was like, we're only going to like student leaders themselves are only going to be the ones who want to do it. But it was funny because we were like celebrating it on a youth night. We were talking about it. And what we found is that other students were getting jealous that they weren't getting up at 6 a.m. to pray on their schools. We're like, okay, like let's keep this ball rolling. So this was fall of last year. And then the second wave hit and restrictions really clamped down here in BC. So we were no longer able to like pick up students at their actual houses. Like BC became really tight in that regard. So we had to pause it. But what we're really excited for this year is we're just setting like a youth-wide. So this is like kind of our second main. We have other like side goals, but this is our youth-wide goal that we're actually partnering with young adults on, where we want to see. I'll give you the specific language again, and then I'll
want
break it down.
Yeah, give it.
But across youth and young adults, we want to see 500 cumulative hours of early morning prayer. And what that would look like is, for youth, if we just took like our 250 hour split, if we had 5 people, doesn't have to be the same 5 people, but 5 people once per week waking up super early in the morning to go around their school and pray, we would hit 250. And it's like, honestly, I think we're going to crush it, because I hope that our church has been doing these things at the start of a year where you do, like last year to start 2021, you do 21 days of prayer and fasting. I think this year we'll do 22 days of prayer and fasting. Man, my goal is that we would have a group for every single one of those days and just like walking around, just covering our city in prayer. Young adults is going to match it to competition. Oh yeah, it's going to be great.
Oh, come on. This is so great. Hey, and so first of all, Nate, this is brilliant. And I remember, man, when I was youth pastoring in Lethbridge, I started doing early mornings with a couple of kids, and then I thought it was a waste of time, so I quit. And years later, one kid came back to me and said, those early morning times, those were the most significant in my faith formation. And I didn't realize it. So first of all, this is game changer stuff. Second of all, I've been taking my kids to basketball at like 6:30 a.m. forever. So for some of you youth workers who are thinking there's no way a kid's going to get up and do something like this, oh, you don't know, because they get up for all sorts of things. And if they get up with like the coolest person in the world that they get to hang with, their youth leader, you know that that's worth getting up for. Now, if it's their parent, no, that's not happening. But if it's their youth leader, come on. The youth leaders, you have no idea how much power you have on this. I think this is so beautiful. I love it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And I think you definitely do have to sell it a little bit. Like you have to come in and like, it's the nature of how goofy of an idea it is that all of a sudden it starts to sound cool. Like you could pray at any time of the day, but we're deciding to get up at 5:30, 6 in the morning. We'll pick you up. And like for the sake of Plan to Protect, we always have 2 leaders come and pick up. So it's always clear. But, it's just, I'm so excited about that one.
Oh, Nate, I just got to tell you right now, I'm so stoked. So listen, we're getting close to the end of this podcast time. There's a couple of things I just want to articulate right away. First of all, what you should hear from Nathan is that, hey, we need to measure different things. And there are some great things that we can measure. And it can be really fun when we can put numbers to things, because it helps us do a couple things. Number one, it makes it accessible. And number two, it allows us to celebrate. And we need to celebrate things. And you know, sometimes hey, listen, if we were just celebrating minutes, that would be no better than just celebrating 55 kids showing up at youth group. Wouldn't be any better. But we know those minutes matter because there's something significant happening within those minutes. And so they help motivate us to lean into these really important things. I think it's incredibly beautiful. So youth workers, you know, do the hard work, clarify some goals, which are super fun, make them accessible, go do it. You never know what God's going to do with that. I think it's great. Number two, I love what you should have heard from Nathan is that we're moving out, decentralizing, moving beyond program moments, but making it accessible movement, but still moving beyond those program moments. And then the third thing that you should have heard is that when we have our adult leaders doing it with kids, they're modeling something. So this is going to shape our lives as young. Like, Nate, one of the reasons as a point leader, I want my volunteers to be doing this is because it's going to shape their life. Like, this is about their faith formation as well. And then when we model that, like, that is so powerful in the life of a young person. I think that's beautiful. And then the final thing is I really love the missional nature of what you're talking about, because kids are, just all of a sudden they realize that this space where they're at in their school, like I'm talking about this one practice in particular you're talking about, and there's a million others we should do, but this helps kids have this sense of like missional focus in the space they spend most of their time. What a sense of purpose that can begin to like resonate in a young person as they walk into this space, I think it's incredible, dude. I just love it so much. Nate, that's beautiful. You're chomping us to give me a couple of more bits of joy and happiness here. So go ahead, give me a couple more things. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, going on that missional nature and knowing that youth worker community is really pushing this year on mission and outreach and evangelism. This is not a primary metric of ours this year, but I'm thinking, I mean, I'm a visionary. My brain's already in 2022, 2023. That's where my brain's operating.
Yeah, bro.
So we're thinking in terms of similar to like that number of connections you would have per week. We're thinking tracking amongst students and leaders the number of spiritual conversations we have, which is language just like pulled directly from like Barna Research and Alpha. Just to say, like, we're not looking for like people who've prayed the sinner's prayer necessarily, though that would be great, but just the nature of what evangelism looks like is spiritual conversations. And what I'm really hopeful for is we're not just looking for student to student spiritual conversations, though we want that, and leader to student conversations, though we want that. We want leader to coworker or leader to neighbor spiritual conversations as well. Because I mean, you harp on this all the time, and we just know like the importance of leaders who are taking this seriously and then can model that. And I've been trying even personally to be intentional about even just acknowledging, like, when we talk about outreach, just talking pretty bluntly, even like, hey, this is not something that comes naturally to me, but here's some ways that I'm trying to step into it. Here's relationships that I've been building with my neighbors. Here was like a moment, hour and a half conversation about Jesus. Here was a 3-week stretch where I didn't make eye contact with them because I was exhausted and I burnt out and spent myself. But I wanted to like restore myself from that. So like spiritual conversations is, I think, another great metric if you want to plug into. Big long-term metric that we're going for next year is we want to start funneling everything in terms of how many students we're sending as missionaries to either a university campus or their workplace. And that, I mean, truthfully, that sounds at first like a point worker type of metric, but if I was to just like speak to volunteers and say why it's not, like at the end goal is like someone graduates high school and we've plugged them in with a ministry somewhere else, we've plugged them in with a mentor somewhere else, a church somewhere else, and a continuing mentor from our home church. But the reality is the only way that's ever going to happen is if you start that in grade 6 or 7. Some of our strongest student leaders, if they have not been trained to think missionally all the way through, don't have context for ongoing mentorship, don't have context for going somewhere as a missionary. And that doesn't matter. Like, I think that we have had a really strong program for years, but if we haven't been training our students to be missional, like in their everyday contexts, then it's not something you can just like pull out of a hat last minute. So it starts with that right at the beginning.
Nathan, thank you so much. Oh my word, that's so beautiful. Okay, I just want to end with a couple of things. First of all, Nate, you've been a gift to us here, and thank you. You've re-challenged me. So I'm accountable, by the way, in the churches that I work with to senior leadership about what we're doing with our youth ministry. So one of the first things I'm thinking is I got to take this podcast and send it to my senior leader and say, you got to listen to this because I think we got to think about this more. So listen, if you're a volunteer youth worker, you just heard this, you're feeling like inspired, you need to go to your point leader, pastor of your church, leader in your organization, say, hey, listen to this, because I think there's a different way for us to think about what we're doing that could really make a difference. So use it. Do it that way. Second thing I want to say, Nate, we're really excited about the YWC Road Tour coming up. So we're going to be with you guys out there, Central Heights. We're pumped about that. We're going right across the country. But here's something to consider, my friends. When you sign up for the YWC Road Tour, you also get our 4 core responsibilities. And here's what it is. For us, the 4 core responsibilities are 4 training videos for helping your volunteer youth workers really focus on what's important. So, hey, if you just do these 4 things, engage and play, guide and pray, you could change a kid's life. If you listen to those videos, you could start building some metrics out of those videos that would be really powerful. So if you think about guide, for instance, we want to say to our volunteers, your life, is a guide to the kids in your care. What you do teaches them. What are some things you should be guiding them in? Praying around their school. Right. Okay, let's measure that. So you can take the simple focus points, build some metrics out of it, or build some goals out of it, or some challenges for your volunteers to their students. And again, it could be really like transforming. So grab it, use it, do it. And then please, if you could, make sure you tell us the stories, because as a community, we got to share these stories with each other, right, Nate? Like you even talk about at the beginning of the pandemic, how we just went into major share mode, which for me, again, was like inspiring. And we hear that. And so we need to share the stories, both of the wins and the losses. But we'd love you to get those back to us. You could fire them at info@youthworker.community. We'd love to hear that stuff. I think that would be brilliant. So I'm so excited as you head into this fall, youth workers. We know there's going to be challenges, ups and downs. Stay the course. Our mission doesn't change. And if you're not leading, who will? So we got to stay in it, got to stay healthy, stay in it. Nate, is there anything you'd like to end with here before we shut this thing down?
Jesus loves you. Keep following him. Nothing better than that.
I was just wondering if maybe you might, Nate, you're too young for this, but I'm just so inspired to think that maybe you could break into the Jesus Loves You rap by DC Talk, their very first album. By the way, go ahead, YouTube that beast. That's going to be a win for you. Very first. Which, by the way, I was 16 when it came out in Regina for a DeGarmo and Key concert. Ended up DC Talk was the opening band. Jesus Loves You rap. Michael, unbelievable.
I saw, closest I got was seeing Toby Mac at YC in Edmonton, kind of near the tail end, when he kind of like started... wasn't as big as he used to be.
There's no tail end of Toby Mac. Wait, there's no tail end of Toby Mac. Don't even speak that to me.
You're right. I take it back. I repent.
Hey, everybody. Want to say thank you so much for taking your time, listening to the podcast. We look forward to hearing from you and can't wait to hook up with you next week. God bless you. We'll talk to you soon.